Hey, Staci, welcome to the show.
So great to be here with you.
I am so excited about this episode. One of the things that I realize in business, and when I see successful businesses, really successful, like when I say success, I mean the owner is not working 9 to 5. He actually runs and owns a business. That all happens, I think, when there's organization and systems in place, and we're going to talk a lot about that. But before we get to that, though, I would love for you to tell the audience, like, who Staci is and a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah. So I was actually raised in a very entrepreneurial home. I graduated high school at 16, and my father didn't want me to go off to college. So he had a very successful, still does, business teaching people how to invest in real estate and mentoring them. And he said, come work for me, and if in 2 years you'll be 18 and you want to go off to college, you can, and you'll be the same age as everybody, so you won't miss out on anything. But if you experience some success in the next 2 years, then maybe consider not going to college. And so when I graduated at 16, I started answering the phones for him and his business. And probably within 6 months, maybe less, I was like, I do not want to do this anymore. I don't like answering the phones. And so one of the greatest gifts he gave me was he said, okay, that's fine. You don't have to answer the phones. And he handed me a copy of E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And he said, you can get out of answering the phones if you hire and train your replacement. So I was like reading E-Myth. I'm like, okay, I can create processes and procedures and standard operating procedures and get it all dialed and then hire and train my replacement. And then I realized, oh, I have to lead and manage this person and have like accountability structures and KPIs and scorecards. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. So then I was like, I'll read all the leadership books, John Maxwell, Zig Ziglar, Traction, Scaling Up, and just studied ferociously so that I could get all of the systems, processes, leadership, and management in place. And eventually I didn't go to college. I bought my first property at 18 and then continued to up level in business and ended up becoming the president of all of our family brand businesses. And then full circle, I actually exited our family brands and started developing my own businesses. And then my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in about 2014. And my dad called and said, hey, can you come run all the family brands again? Because mom now has cancer and we need to spend time with her. And I said, well, yes, of course I'll do it, but I want to create systems and structures because I want freedom as well from being in the day-to-day. And I didn't know it at the time, but what I actually was creating is organized to scale. But it was the freedom, and the thing that was so amazing about that was we created the processes and we created the procedure or put the people in place. But we actually were more profitable and we grew when we slowed down to put the infrastructure in place. And my mother passed in December of 2019.
Yeah.
And we were there. We spent the last 18 months of her life with her, barely working. I mean, we were working, but barely working.
Right.
And so we had that freedom. And then when we came back after she passed, the existing businesses were already doing so well that we decided to launch more businesses, as entrepreneurs do.
Well, and it really is, because so I love the whole journey, because I think a lot of people don't understand that it is a trial by fire sometimes, right? Like you learn so much by just getting in the trenches.
Yes.
and getting dirty. Like, oh my gosh, geez, that was a mess. We need to get organized. You start learning that that's the system. And then I love it that you're, so coming from, someone that's already successful to be fiercely independent as well, saying, I want my brand. Like, I know you got yours and I'm glad to be a part of it, but I want my thing, right?
Yeah.
And I find even with my kids, I started seeing them, they're like, yeah, Dad, I don't want to be in your business. I really want to create my own. Like, I don't want to be under that umbrella per se, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that. I love that about your stories, just the perseverance of doing that and then coming back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at when you really started putting it all together, where you had that time freedom, let's unpack that a little bit. Like, what does that mean exactly? How do you organize to scale? Like, where does all that start, right? Because I think most entrepreneurs are like me. When they first start out, they have like 20 different hats. And honestly, one hat's really all they're good at. And so we're juggling stuff, and it's usually, and as a visionary, most business owners that I know, I think, are visionaries, right? They're really good at ideas, but they're really not good at details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I'm no different. We're no different. So we do it at Organize to Scale in a 3-step process. The first, and your audience will appreciate this because it's really relatable to real estate. Step 1 is architect. And that's where the visionary, like you were saying, you're the visionary and a design team get together and they architect the business and they create the business blueprint. This is how we want the business to run. This is what we want it to do.
Yes.
That blueprint gets handed to a build team. And the build team is like your general contractor in real estate. And they go assemble all of the tools and contractors and people that you need to build the essential infrastructure that you need in order to operate your business. And after it's built, it moves into the operate phase. And the operate phase is where you plug in the people to maintain and run the day-to-day. And in real estate, it's a tenant and probably a property manager. Inside of the business, it's your administrative team, it's your recurring items, they all get plugged in. What we have done in business, and so many entrepreneurs do, is we hire people who are tenants or operate minded and ask them to architect or build. And and they're not qualified to do it. And then they're discouraged, they feel demotivated, they feel unqualified, and then they kind of just throw up their arms and don't even try. Or they just try to keep the bare minimum done, and then the whole operation ends up being reactive versus proactive. And there's massive operational chaos. The visionary feels like they have an expensive payroll, but nothing's actually getting done.
It's like a fire drill every day, right? And all they're doing is putting out fires. And you're like, what? I thought we were trying to get organized and all this stuff, but it's like, we're not.
Yes. Yeah. And it isn't necessarily those tenants' fault, but they're just not qualified and they didn't have the blueprint and the infrastructure wasn't built. So they're trying to execute, say, an email marketing campaign or sourcing or vetting a deal, but the structure and resources to actually get those things done aren't there. And so you have to kind of step back and do that. But when you're in the architect phase, going to your point of wearing all the hats all the time and not really being qualified to do it, every visionary has their sweet spot as well. So in the architect phase, and you're really designing a business around the lifestyle you want, in addition to the service you want to provide to the marketplace. And you got to figure out your sweet spot. So what is it that energizes you, motivates you, you're uniquely qualified to do, and it gives the biggest bang for the buck for your time and impact on the company?
Yes. Well, and you just said something that really spiked my ears, like the lifestyle that you want. Mm-hmm. So I see, to me, this is that's a big item, because most people, I think if they really ask themselves, and this doesn't have to be just real estate guys, I think it's almost a lot of owners or business owners in general, they get into this idea of, I'm going to run my own business, and then they get buried because they never built it to work around the lifestyle that they really wanted. And because they weren't cognitive of it from the very beginning and said, here's what I want to do. I want to have these days off. I want to work these hours. This is how I want to run it. So then if you don't have if that's not your focus, then it's going to default to you workaholic.
Right. Well, I think there's two parts. One is what you just said. There's not a pre-established boundaries around what you will and will not do in the lifestyle you want. The second part is a lot of the visionary entrepreneurs that I know are massively passionate about their work. They love it. Yes. They're obsessed with it. They eat, drink, sleep it. They wake up like, oh my gosh, I just got this new idea. I want to go execute. So part of it is just the fire in us naturally that we just love what we're doing so much. And so it's like, okay, how can you put boundaries around this fireball of passion that you have, and then put the systems and infrastructure underneath so that you actually can be that fireball of passion, but you're not doing any of the things that really aren't a fit for you, so that it does create the lifestyle you want.
And that's working in your genius zone. It really is saying, hey, these are the things that really drive me and I like it. And for me, I love the ideas. I don't want to necessarily do the operations behind the ideas. I want someone else to take that vision and be like, okay, well, these 3 things out of the 5 is good. I can get that and make it work. You're like, okay, and here's how we're gonna do X, Y, Z. I'm not even gonna figure out X, Y, Z. I just want to be like, here's the vision, and we want to get here. Someone else has to build the bridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you're talking about the architect is the first or the blueprint, right?
Right.
And then your build team.
Yes.
So in my mind, I'm thinking that's like an integrator or someone that's going to help you touch base with that.
Yep. The integrator is the person that can translate the vision. So the visionary really can see the front of the puzzle box in color done. That's probably as far as a visionary gets. They're like, I know what I want. This is what the puzzle box looks like. And then you dump out all the puzzle pieces and the visionary is like, I'm out. Like, I'm not.
That's a great analogy.
I'm not putting it together.
Lord help me, what have I done?
Yeah. But an integrator or a build mentality person has the discipline and the patience and the scope and sequence in their mind to be like, okay, well, the corners need to be like this. And then the center would be like this. And then we can fill in the rest. And that's what a great integrator does. And then they put people in place. I mean, the puzzle example ends here because you can't put people in place to manage your puzzle, but then you put people in place to operate the day-to-day. And the integrator has that. The integrator is very logical. They think in scope and sequence. They can push back on a visionary who wants everything done yesterday and can say, hey, that's a great idea. We'll put it on the parking lot for a future discussion, but we've got to stay disciplined to the scope and sequence to lay the foundation first.
Yes, that's a big piece. The integrator has to be able to push back because as most visionaries, they are demanding, we want it done now, tomorrow, yesterday is not fast enough, right? And you want to see instant results of this thing that you saw.
Yeah.
But the reality is, sometimes it's not the greatest idea, or it'll take time because you got step 2 and 3 that you still get done before you even get to step 4, which is like launch.
Right. And then often as visionaries, we short circuit the process because we'll push harder than the integrator wants to go. And then things that weren't ready start breaking down. And then it's like, okay, now I got to slow down even more because of it. So getting the scope and sequence and having that healthy tension in the visionary integrator relationship is really important.
What do you think most business owners fail first? Like, where is their biggest disconnect where they break things, where they really break down?
I think it depends on the visionary. So a visionary who is maybe a little bit more analytical in nature, they may overanalyze and it breaks down because they don't move fast enough. But then you have the really successful visionaries are the ones that I think move really quickly. And it breaks down in terms of team capacity. So people get so overwhelmed and bogged down by the volume, and there wasn't enough infrastructure established that it just keeps layering on. And then it's like people just melt. And then the visionary feels like, oh no, I've got to step back in and fix this, but I just have a stampede of the front end.
So I actually just did this at Phil Like, right? So like, oh yeah, this is me. So we were having issues with our property manager, right? And so we decided, you know what? We're going to let him go, right? I'm going to create my own management company. And so I get my, my 3 heads, like my integrator and my controller. I'm like, here's what we're going to do. And they're like, okay, all right. I'm like, we got 30 days to do it. Right. I maybe left out my manager company fired me, and which was great because we were micromanaging. We pissed them off so much they finally just gave me notice. So I'm like, we don't have a choice now. We're on the clock. We got to go. And so it's like, Bill, like, well, here we go. And there was a point there, I remember it really vividly, where it was like I could tell they were looking maybe like, this may not be, I'm out, right? Yeah. And it was like, oh my God. So it was happening real live for me. And I was like, oh God, because we didn't have enough people or structure or staff. Right. And yet I was trying to interview. But now once I got some quality people hired, right? So I was like, this was my controller was like, dude, you need another staff account. We need accounts payable. And we need not just new people, we need good people. Mm-hmm. And or like, I'm going to fail, right? She was just overwhelmed with no, I can't do it all, Corey. I'm not God, right? I can't met. So I experienced that firsthand, Staci. I was like, oh God. But that was the handed a deal. And I'm like, okay, we're shifting.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh God, whoa, hold on. Right. In the looking back through it, I wish it's like, okay, we should have just maybe, I mean, we knew it was coming because we were pushing pretty hard.
Yeah.
We should have got ready for staff. We should have started staffing earlier.
It's kind of that milk and cereal thing, though. It's like, okay, I need to do it, but I don't have the cash flow. They're like, you're kind of just teetering. So
Well, that's exactly what it was. Yeah. It was like, okay, how do I pay for them? Because I can't pay for it until I take over the management company. Then I get that's another revenue stream that I can afford these people. So I'm like, I'm in a yin and yang. I'm like, oh God, how do we put it all together?
one solution that we have found that has worked for that is project-based help. So you don't feel like you're stacking your payroll or your bench with a bunch of recurring expenses, but you have project-based help to pull in. That can help. I just have to applaud your controller or your integrator who was like, came to you first, and also just your relationship with them. They came to you first and said, hey, I'm going to drop balls if we don't get some help. You have a very great relationship, like open door relationship. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and they were honest. There was one where, we had a couple sessions, right, where we were just talking. And, it's like, I make it, for me, one of my biggest things is I check in with my two heads, like my controller and my integrator every morning, right? So like, and I can tell, like, sometimes you got to read the scope of the language. Like when the language is they're shutting down, they're not talking, I'm like, okay, talk to me.
Yeah.
What's going on, right? And I'm like, and I can just, so then once I gave her the, go ahead, let me have it, right? And here it came, like, oh, this is going way worse than I thought. I got to solve this quick. And, but it was funny. I think also too, in visionaries and team building, I think this is what I've learned from that whole spot is if you really hire great people, they will, I mean, they went to hell and back with me, right? Pretty proud of that moment. And then we're all looking at each other. We're like, we did it. Yeah. We just did it, right?
Yeah.
And when we're starting to get a little calm, we're like, okay, we got some more people. We actually have more staff now than we thought, and it's actually getting a little bit more calmer. We're like, we see, gosh dang, that was good, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing that is so beautiful, I say that teams are forged in crisis. You were in a crisis and your team came together. And that's like, that needs to happen. It happens in military all the time. When you're in the trenches, your brother's got your back. In business, it's the same thing. And sometimes we miss the opportunity as leaders to leverage the crisis to bond. Instead, we can be like, well, so-and-so didn't do this or point fingers. But when we don't do that and we say, look at the crisis as an opportunity to get stronger as a team and really lean in with that mentality and that energy and those questionings and those conversations, it makes you stronger. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did with.
So yeah, it was with a lot of patience, a lot of love, and a lot of listening too. On my part, I think I had to do a lot of listening. I had to eat a little bit of crow too. Like, hey, you know what? Yeah. I screwed up. We should have done this. Look, there's some certain steps that maybe the sequence wasn't exactly right. But at the end of the day, it was a great experience for us and learning, okay, so we want to be able to plan for growth. Now that one was kind of we couldn't help it, but it is what it was. It was a grenade. Yeah. But we learned a lot from each other on that, right? Now, when you look at businesses, I'm sure someone says, hey, Staci, I want to organize the scale, right? I got to assume that most companies, when you first look through the door, you're like, yep, that is chaos, right? Right? How do they get comfortable with that? What do you tell those types of people?
Well, it's normal. So I think you have to normalize business is messy. Growth is messy. Even if you have read all of the books, have all of the systems and tools in place, it's still messy. You're dealing with humans. You're dealing with economic changes that sometimes you can and cannot control or influence. It's just messy. And if we try to say it's supposed to be perfect and you have your ducks in a row and everything's going to be smooth sailing for the rest of your life, then that's an unrealistic expectation. The businesses that I look behind the curtain and I'm like, okay, yeah, we have some operational chaos, but the good thing is you have proof of concept. You have sales, you have a viable product, you have something people want, and you're passionate about it. You have the makings of a great business. You have the bones of it, just like a house. If you were to go in a rehab of a house, you could look at one and be like, okay, this one, no salvaging it, not even worth it, tear down. Then there's that, oh, actually, you know what? Plumbing's still good. Probably need to rip out the carpet, do a little adjustments, do a little tweaks, raise the rent, get a better tenant in. It's the same thing in business.
Yeah.
And it's normal.
Yeah.
And I think also too, as a visionary, there's a lot of growth the visionary has to go through. I'm going through another iteration of growth right now. And as visionaries are culture creators, and culture drives behaviors. And so if you're not happy with the behavior that's happening in your company, it's often a reflection of the culture that was created by the visionary.
Yes.
And the visionary often needs to look in the mirror, and that's the hardest shift sometimes that we have to make with our visionaries, is they think it's about just the systems and just the people and just the processes. And there's an element of that, but even the best system, the best people, and the best processes with a undisciplined, maverick, challenging visionary, eventually all of those processes, systems, and people are going to degrade.
Yeah. I 1000%, I'm a maverick as well in my PI. So I know this, right?
Yeah.
Now, but I will tell you, I believe culture is one of the biggest things you could do as a leader. There's a book called CEO Does Three Things by Trey Taylor, I think it is.
Okay.
But he says he's like culture, people, and numbers. Those are the three things a CEO should focus on. But to my previous point, though, Staci, I just know there's a lot of my friends that are successful. I mean, I'll call them very successful real estate operators, right? Mm-hmm. But they are afraid. The reason they won't get help is they don't want anybody to know. And I think that's just a tragedy because they're already doing well, but they are so afraid that someone's going to see their dirty mess behind door number 2. And the truth is, we're all some sort of messy. We have a closet somewhere that's bad, right? Yeah. And don't let that stop you from seeking and getting help, because your business will thrive when you get people like Staci to come in and look at it and clean your house, clean it up. And the biggest part is sometimes you got to pull it all out before you can get it, before you get to put it back together again.
Right. And people like us want to make you look good. So we have confidentiality on our side. We don't share what we see behind the hood, under the hood, or behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But I understand that, when people are starting their businesses and it's their pride and joy and they're passionate about it and they feel like it's a reflection of who they are, and it's an element of incongruency. They feel like they put on this presentation of what's happening, but behind the scenes, it's not exactly what they're advertising. So there's an element of imposter syndrome, but that is also very, very normal when you scale. You go through different.
You gotta see it and believe it before you have it, right?
Yes.
It's just part of what it is.
Yes.
And so, we manifest. I know as business owners, that's what we do. We manifest our success. We may not be there yet, but we know that's where we're going.
Yeah. And
so I think for everyone that's listening right now, I want to make sure that you guys understand that you may need help. Your closets are probably dirty, but that's okay. It is actually normal. But every time I've talked to someone like Staci, or someone come into my business like Staci, I have grown almost like a 10x, right? I mean, we started off when we first had we had a traction integrator came into our business, right? And it was like, okay, well, just write down. We wrote down all the chaos, and we're looking around the room. We're like, oh gosh, that's bad.
Yeah.
And then the next year he came over and he was like, wow, even the way we were communicating as a team, Staci, it was bad. Yeah. We're just like, F you, F that, right? It was like, well, this one, it was Shelly was my biggest, two mavericks. Me and my wife were going at it. Yeah. And everybody else is like, when we were going at it, everybody's like going, powering. And it was very interesting. And then in the next meeting, we finally had found our roles and kind of separated our silos a little bit. Yeah. And it was pleasant. It was a lot pleasanter. Yeah. You still like to take off the gloves every once in a while, though. Yeah. But so Shelly's your integrator. No, Shelly's not. Shelly is my wife. Yes, I know that. So I thought she was also your integrator. No. Oh, no. Okay. No way. They would never work. Shelly, I thought that was great. Shelly's actually a visionary. Shelly is, so The best way I describe my wife is she's not full-time, she's not part-time, but she's sometimes, right? And the sometimes part is what's very chaotic because when she turns on hard, right? But then she's like, all right, well, now I got to go home and I got, social and I got this, and this, and this.
Yeah.
Right. So as a company, we're all sometimes it's like really disruptive. And so even though I love my wife and she is amazing, she is very amazing in things that she does. When she activates, it's beyond reproach. Right. But we've also said, what's her best role? She is my biggest cheerleader and promoter.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, but her attention, she's a maverick as well.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, there's no way that she could be an integrator.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to do the detailed stuff to get done. Yeah. So we actually hired, her name's Candy, but she is our COO.
Yeah.
And that's what she does. And we both agreed that was the right person. Like we both interviewed and said, yep, that's the one.
Yeah. And your wife is awesome. She can dance, she can sing.
I mean, I'm telling you, it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we've had to learn this. This is our biggest struggle, is to learn how to be in business together. Both being mavericks, both being very strong, like have our ideas, how it should be ran. And honestly, Shirley, it was hard for you. I wouldn't call it a backseat because I would say she's right next to me. She's my partner. She's side by side and she wants to be, she's doing her own podcast. But when she stays in that role, she's great. But like sometimes she'll start trying to go in the operations side. We're like, pull back. No, you don't get to go there. Right. I don't even get to go there.
Yeah.
Because I blow it up too every time. Yeah. When my integrator's in there, she does well. She plays well with everybody.
Yeah.
Shelly and I, we break stuff all the time.
Visionaries, that's what we do.
Yeah, we've learned this. The more we stay in our roles, the better it is. And so, Staci, when I think about what you've done and what you've created, I mean, it really is helping people out there, help companies grow to amazing companies. What's the biggest joy out of what you do?
My passion is untrapping entrepreneurs. And so when people are untrapped, that's so fulfilling for me. And for me, my why, and I anchor it to my father, because my father was trapped and my mother was battling cancer and he ultimately passed. And we were able to get the businesses structured properly. But there are so many visionary entrepreneurs who are trapped in their businesses. And what it's impacting is their relationship with their spouse and their availability to their family. And to me, that matters because my father was at our dinner table conversations and he taught me about supply and demand and deferred gratification and discipline and teamwork. And that shaped me. And so when we don't have that in the homes, it's an impact that is going to influence all of us in future generations. So for me, the joy is getting them free so that it can change their dinner table conversations. That's going to eventually change the world we're all living in. And I know that's like a kumbaya big dream, but it's a ripple effect. It's a ripple effect. Mm-hmm.
It starts somewhere, and really the home is the best place to do it, right? Like, and truly, most entrepreneurs will tell you the reason they got into business was for freedom.
Yes.
But most businesses are running them.
Yes.
And sometimes they forget that that's really where they're at. And when you realize and expose to them, they're like, and they all want a better way.
Yes.
Sometimes they just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And so it takes someone like Staci to help unlock and give them their freedom back. Because they've already built, most of the times, successful businesses on their own. They just like you said, you've got to go back to your 3 steps, which is architect, right? Build, and then
operate.
Mm-hmm. I wrote 2 down. I didn't get the last one.
Well, good thing I'm still here.
Great stuff. So if people want to learn more about your company, Staci, where do they find you? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'd love to share a free report and webinar that I did with your audience. They can send an email to scale@organizedtoscale.com. And it goes through in more detail the 3-step process of architect, build, and operate and how it might apply in your business.
Yeah, I think I'm telling you right now, if you have any interest in building your business right, I absolutely urge you to do that right now. In fact, if you are listening right now and you're like, oh, wait, what was it? Could you say the email again?
Sure. It's scale@organize2scale.com.
All right. We'll put it in the show notes too, guys, so you can find it easily there as well. Make sure you take Staci up on that and really find the time to, I promise you, I know this about her and her organization and the way she does things. You will not be let down. It will be good content. It will drive your business probably more than you know. So again, I just, every time I've done something like what Staci has to offer, I have a multitude of like benefits that have happened every time. And I'm a product of having people like Staci in my life, because I don't know it all. And sometimes I get confused of exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I just need an outside person to say, hey, because they're really coming in from, you're looking in the business. Sometimes we're in the business working and we forget to step out and say, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What's on the business?
Even for me, I have outside influences too, because even if you know exactly what to do, when you're the visionary in your own business, you're too close to it. And so you need to have the exposure to blind spots and so forth that a third party can provide.
Amen. Love it. Love it. Staci, is there any books that you've been reading lately that you'd like to share with the audience that you feel have really impacted you?
I think the one book that has impacted me the most recently, as you can see, I have a big library, but have you read Dan Sullivan's book, The Gap and the Gain?
Huh.
Okay. This one has really impacted me. I'm type A, high D, want everything done yesterday. I set goals in phases. And one of the things that I think has robbed me of some of the joy in my journey is that the second I set a goal, it's say this is your goal and you're here. And then you make it to here, but once you get here, you say, okay, now my goal is up higher. So you're constantly moving your target. And then not only that, you're evaluating yourself based on you were here, you got here. You're evaluating your progress on the gap versus the gain. And so for me, it's starting to really celebrate the wins and recognize that actually I was here, I got here, I moved the goalpost, but I still made a lot of progress. And me helping to judge myself based on the gain and not the gap has actually helped me be a better leader too, to judge the team and what we accomplish as a company based on the gain and not the gap. It doesn't mean you don't still set goals and so forth, but that has helped me enjoy the journey more versus just the hard charging, never looking up to see how far we've come.
So you can say the short journey is actually the reward when you do it that way, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, love it. Great share. Guys, again, that will be in the show notes for you to look after. If there's some advice that some last piece of advice you'd like to give our audience, what advice would you give either new entrepreneurs or ones that have somewhat established businesses? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think you're doing great work. I think the world needs entrepreneurial leaders right now. And by doing what you're passionate about and serving the world in that way, it's making a difference. And it is going to be hard. It requires grit, but make sure you have your compelling why front and center, because the why carries you through the ups and downs, and there will be ups and downs. Even if you do everything right, there's going to be ups and downs. And so surrounding yourselves with people that have that same mentality and then keeping your mission front and center carries you through.
Amen. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Staci, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Guys, listen, this is what we try to do each and every podcast, is bring great talent just like Staci onto the show. So make sure you don't keep us a secret. Pound the like button, share it as often as you can. Guys, Staci is a true testament of integrity, vision, to work your goals, to work your dream. Success doesn't come by happenstance. It is actually, it's put in the mind. It starts in the mind as a vision, a dream. She's chased her dream. She's watered it. She's tended it. She's mended it. And look at her, and she's taken what she's learned. Now she's sharing it with other businesses. What a wonderful, thriving opportunity to radiate and touch more than just her own little thing, guys. That is what she's sharing. Guys, success doesn't happen by chance. It starts with a dream, and if you believe it, you can achieve it. In your paradise is possible.